Our theme this year is equipping the saints for works of ministry. It's especially hard to equip people, I think, in the midst of a pandemic or on the heels of a pandemic. But during the class this morning, we talked about how actually there's a radical shift in the way people are thinking, in the way Christians are thinking. And really, ultimately, it sounds a little bit strange, but I think there's going to be a kind of a survival of the fittest among churches. A lot of churches are closing their doors, but at the same time, a lot of churches are opening their doors and planting churches in record numbers like we've never seen before. And I think that's super exciting. We talked in class about the harnessing of the online people. The younger people prefer online. A lot of people are still online who are older, and they're really enjoying it, and they connect to the church that way. So I think there are going to be a lot of really positive changes that we're seeing post-pandemic. With that said, I think there's a lot of fear that's mixed in with that, and a lot of people don't know what to do with that fear. There was a national survey that was done by the American Psychological Association. This was, I believe, back in, I think that was in January that they did the survey, if I'm not mistaken. This article was released just in April, ironically, April 1st of this year. But the title of the article is A National Mental Health Crisis. Yeah, here it says right here. That's where I got the date from. Survey conducted January 21st through 25th by the Harris Poll on behalf of the APA found that stress in the United States is the highest it has been since early in the pandemic. So I'm going to walk through the survey because I think there are a couple things that are telling, and they don't really parse the findings here. They just kind of put them out there. So I'm going to parse them a little bit because I think there's some different things going on here that I think are worth noting. 5.6 is the average level of stress in January of 2021. So that's out of 10. The national average of stress people rate as a 5.6. I don't know where some of you fall within that, if your stress level is like super high or if it's super low. Right now, Natalie and I were just talking yesterday, our stress level is kind of high, but it's not because of anything going on in the country necessarily. It's just that our schedules are full and we're busy and life is just kind of sweeping us along. Nothing bad, nothing catastrophic or anything like that. 81% of U.S. adults cited the future of the nation as a significant source of stress, compared with 80% who cited the coronavirus pandemic, 74% who cited political unrest around the nation, 72% who cited the current political climate, and 66% who cited the January 6th breach of the U.S. Capitol. So kind of shows 81% of U.S. adults are extremely on edge. And then they broke it down for each of these areas. 90% overall percentage of Americans who say they hope that the United States moves toward unity. I thought this was really interesting. 90% of people in this nation, for the survey conducted in January of this year, 90% of people say, we want to walk this nation towards unity. I think that's super encouraging, and I think this is where it gets even more encouraging. 92% of Democrats say that they hope that the United States moves towards unity, and 91% of Republicans and 88% of independents hold that view. In a related vein, 70% of Americans said the current social divisiveness in the country causes them stress, while 84% agreed that the United States has serious societal issues it needs to address. I think what's interesting about this is that by far the overwhelming vast majority of people hope for and want to see unity. No matter your political affiliation, no matter your religious affiliation, none of that matters. Everybody, almost everybody, would like to see the nation united, would like to see people united. All this stuff that we hear that, people on one side of the political spectrum, people on the other side, there's no way they can come together, there's no way they can meet in the middle, there's no way that there's ever going to be unity. We hear this repeatedly, and what's interesting about these statistics is that's driving up fear and anxiety, but it doesn't match reality. It doesn't match reality. The reality is that most everybody wants to see unity, they just don't know how to get there. And if there's a path that makes sense where people can get there, they'll likely take it. 84% of Americans who reported, they reported feeling stress-based emotions in the 2 weeks before the survey was conducted. The most common emotions included anxiety at 47%, sadness at 44%, and anger at 39%. Now here's the point, and here's the point for this sermon. Some of you feel this stress, and you feel it from other people. You go online. If you're like me, you go on social media and you just start to get anxious, just watching people, not even interacting, just watching people interact with each other. You start to hyperventilate and break out in hives because you're like, what is wrong with people? Right? People's fear, when that fear increases, the ability to associate with other people and have normal conversations decreases. We begin to feel, when fear increases, we begin to feel panic, anxiety, feeling like we're not capable of having any direction in our life. We feel trapped in our jobs. We feel hopeless. We feel disparity. We feel depression. We feel sadness. We feel anger. All these emotions come to the surface when fear is at its highest. It's crippling. Well, how does this relate to our series on equipping people, equipping the saints for the works of ministry? Well, the one thing is that whether we know it or not, fear creeps into our life. All of us. It creeps into our life, and if we're not on guard, that fear increases, and it becomes crippling. It has this crippling effect on us. We become more nervous, we become more scared, we become more hesitant, we become less confident, self-esteem takes a dive, interrelationships take a dive, they start to become strained. It has an effect on literally every single aspect of our life, including physical health. Our physical health begins to decline. Incidentally, the most repeated commandment in the entire Bible from cover to cover is, does anybody know it? Do not fear. Do not fear is the most repeated commandment in the entire Bible. It appears, that phrase, that particular phrase, do not fear, appears over 70 times in the NIV Bible. That doesn't include all of its variants, which are hundreds of them. Interestingly, it's not fear. Fear itself is not explosive. It's not crippling. It's the fear of men. Improperly placed fear. Because one of the second most repeated commands in all of the Bible is what? Fear the Lord your God. That's properly placed fear. It's appropriate fear. But when we fear men, when we fear each other, when we fear what your neighbor is going to do, when we're constantly on edge, we become paranoid. People ask me in advocacy, how do you keep from getting paranoid? Are you paranoid? And my answer is no, I'm not, because paranoia destroys people. Paranoia, when we become paranoid, we're always looking over our shoulder. We become ineffective at life. We become anxious. We become nervous. All the signs that I talked about. When fear increases, paranoia increases, along with depression, along with anger, along with sadness. All these things increase when we're afraid of people. And I could give you all kinds of statistics, and I don't really want to bore you with them because I'm a statistics person. I look at facts. I look at what's actually going on in America, and it's honestly not that frightening. It's really not. We hear about all the crime and all the shootings and all this stuff, all the homicides. There's been an increase in homicides, but it's not been an exponential increase. And in the middle of a pandemic and what the world has been through in a year, It's not surprising, actually, that homicides have increased, but they've increased by a number of just about 2,000 in a nation of, what do we have, 320-some million people? The 320, 340? I don't even know how many people. But in a nation of hundreds of millions of people, we had just over 19,000 homicides in the entire country last year. Now, that's a lot. One is too many, but it's not the way that it's being framed. That if you walk out of your doorstep, there's a good chance you're going to get killed, and people are violent, and people are bad, and most people are going to rip your head off, and you can't walk into the store and without the threat of being killed and harassed, and it's just not true. It's not true. And so Jesus sends his people out, and we're reading through Matthew chapter 10. We've been walking through it literally paragraph by paragraph. So this week is a continuation of last week. Last week, we read the passage where Jesus warns his disciples that you're going to be persecuted. That's a fact. You go out there, I'm sending you out into these towns and into these villages, you will be persecuted. I'm sending you out as sheep among wolves. You're going to find floggings in the synagogues. You're going to be dragged before the courts. You're going to see son rise up against father and kill him. You're going to see father rise up against son and kill him. You're going to witness these things and experience these things. And then this is the next words out of Jesus' mouth. After he just told them, you're going to experience these things, he says, so have no fear of them. Wait a second, I thought you just warned us that we're going to experience these persecutions and floggings, and we're going to be dragged before courts, and people are going to be cruel, and people are going to be mean, and people are going to be nasty, and they're all going to do that just because we believe in you. He says, yeah, so have no fear of them. For nothing is covered that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. What I tell you in the dark, say in the light. In other words, don't be intimidated. Don't let people tell you to shut your mouth when talking about me. That's what Jesus is telling his disciples. What I tell you in the dark, say in the light. What you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. And do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Here you have this passage. Do not fear man, fear God. The second most repeated commandments are both in one verse. Do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny, and not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father? But even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore. You are of more value than many sparrows. So everyone who acknowledges me before men, I also will acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I also will deny before my Father who is in heaven. I think it's really powerful. This is really interesting, especially in light of what's going on in a post-pandemic world. We have people who are on edge. We have people who are worried, people who are scared, people realistically who have lost loved ones. We have some real things in life that are really heavy, that are really happening. They're not imagined. But Jesus says, don't be driven by fear. Don't let that fear rule your life. I've lost count of how many friends I personally know who've left ministry permanently this past year. They've permanently left ministry and said, we have no plans of ever going back into ministry again. And when I hear some of their reasons, it's things like, well, we were fighting over certain issues in church and we didn't know how to reconcile, and so I'm leaving. I thought that's what sounds like, to me anyway, it sounds like a fear-based decision. You're afraid you're going to get fired. You're afraid that the church isn't going to like you. You're afraid you're going to be ineffective as a minister. You're afraid that the church is going to decline. You're afraid of these things, and so you just quit. You just give up. You throw in the towel and give up. There's a reason why Jesus tells us not to fear. Fear of men is crippling. Look at the trends of cyberbullying and what's happening in the cyber world with our young kids. It's crippling. When kids fear other kids or other adults, they're crippled. Fear of men is absolutely crippling. So Jesus is telling us, replace your fear. Put your fear in God. Fear him and be obedient to him and tell people about Christ. I think we're facing an absolutely encouraging time in our nation's history. I honestly believe that. I'm not just an optimist and think that, things are going to be great. They're just going to work out. I don't think that. I think we have a hard road ahead of us. But I'm super encouraged because of this. Because the Bible tells us that we can overcome anything through Christ. That if we're faithful to him, that if we get rid of this fear of men, if we quit being afraid of what people say about us and to us and on behalf of us, if we quit fearing what people say and we just live our lives for God, and we're faithful to his mission to reach into the lives of broken people, to help the needy, to help people who are poor, to help people who are fatherless, to help widows, if we reach into the lives of people and we bless them, God will bless that. He says that we are valuable to him. He says not a single sparrow falls to the ground apart from God. He says, aren't you so much more valuable than sparrows? God loves us. God loves his church. God loves his people. God loves this world. God loves this planet. God loves the universe. God made it all. It's perfect and it's beautiful. We've got to stop listening to people who drive fear and increase fear and cripple Christians. We've got to take back what belongs to us. Take back Christ's kingdom. We've got to live our lives for him. As we equip each other, I promise you, your life will be so much better if you stop worrying about what other people think about you. It doesn't matter. Live your life for God and fear him. And live a life of peace and joy and bless people. Give to people. Give them your time. Give them your money. Spend time with people. Sit down with people. Pray with people. Send cards to people. Call people who are in need. And God won't disappoint. I'll leave you with that message. If there's anybody this morning who's not yet taken that step to put Christ on baptism, we've got a baptistry that's always filled up and ready to go. We would invite you to do it. Or if anybody has any prayer needs, we would encourage you to come up as we all stand and sing together.